What if a single misstep could shatter a lifetime of Olympic destiny? Beneath the glittering lights and flawless costumes lies a colder truth on Olympic ice glory balances on the thinnest edge. These are the top 17 most devastating Olympic figure skating falls moments when champions slipped, dreams fractured, and the world watched in stunned silence as history rewrote itself in a heartbeat. Yulia Vyacheslavovna Lipnitskaya. She was only 15, but in Sochi she moved like a myth already written. Yulia Lipnitskaya became the fragile symbol of a nation's pride, her haunting performance in the team event draped in a red coat turning her into the youngest Olympic gold medalist in Russian history. The world watched a teenager skate with eerie composure, flexible as smoke, precise as a blade. Russia soared ahead in the standings, untouchable, unstoppable. And at the center of it all was a girl who seemed born from the ice itself. Yet Olympic glory has a way of shifting its light. Entering the individual competition, expectations towered above her slight frame. The gold she had helped secure for the team now felt like a promise she had to repeat alone. But the margins in figure skating are merciless. In the short program, a triple flip faltered. In the free skate, the triple salchow betrayed her. Each stumble echoed louder than the applause that once surrounded her, and the leaderboard slowly rearranged itself without mercy. From overwhelming favorite to 5th place, the descent was swift and brutally public. Though her talent was never questioned, the momentum had changed and the Olympic stage had revealed both brilliance and fragility in the same breath. In 2017, Lipnitskaya quietly retired from competition, stepping away from the glare to coach the next generation, her Sochi story forever frozen between triumph and heartbreak. Michelle Kwan. At the turn of the century, Michelle Kwan was not merely a competitor. She was America's golden promise carved in steel and silk. A 5-time world champion and 9-time U.S. champion, she had already claimed Olympic silver and bronze, yet one prize shimmered just beyond her reach. Salt Lake City in 2002 was meant to be her coronation, the home ice triumph where destiny would finally seal her legacy in gold. The arena pulsed with belief. Every glide carried the weight of a nation convinced that this was the night their queen would ascend. But the closer she moved toward that long-awaited crown, the heavier it seemed to hang. There were quiet murmurs that this might be her final Olympic chapter, that time was circling like an unseen rival. Then in a moment that felt almost unreal, the triple flip, a jump she had mastered countless times, slipped away. Her toe betrayed the ice, the landing unraveled, and with it the fragile arithmetic of Olympic scoring. A collective gasp swept through the crowd as the gold medal drifted out of reach, replaced by bronze, honorable, historic, yet heartbreakingly incomplete. There would be no sequel to this pursuit. Injury forced her withdrawal from the 2006 Games, and retirement followed soon after, dignified but final. Michelle Kwan left as a legend whose artistry defined an era, yet whose story would forever carry that singular absence. In the end, was the missing gold a flaw in her legacy, or the very shadow that made her brilliance unforgettable? Was Michelle Kwan's 2002 fall the most heartbreaking moment in Olympic skating history? If you still feel that gasp from Salt Lake, comment number 1 below. Jeremy Abbott. Jeremy Abbott arrived in Sochi not as a long shot, but as a seasoned artist of the ice, a 2-time Olympian with the elegance of a classical dancer and the technical arsenal to challenge the best in the world. He had already secured a team bronze for the United States, and while he wasn't the overwhelming favorite for individual gold, insiders believed he would place high, perhaps even disrupt the hierarchy. His skating carried refinement, intelligence, and a quiet fire that suggested he was ready to deliver the performance of his life. Then came the short program and the moment that changed everything. Attempting a quadruple jump, Abbott lost control mid-air and came crashing down, sliding violently into the rink barrier. The impact was sickening, the kind that steals the breath from an arena. For a split second, the Olympic dream didn't just wobble, it shattered against the boards. Conversations about medals evaporated instantly as the scoreboard recalibrated without him. The fall dropped him too far down the standings to realistically contend, but what followed was something rarer than a clean quad. Abbott rose. Shaken, bruised, and visibly stunned, he gathered himself and completed the program with composure that bordered on defiance. He finished the event far from the podium, yet he left the ice with dignity intact, having transformed a disastrous moment into a testament of resilience. In Sochi, Jeremy Abbott did not win an individual medal, but he etched his name into Olympic memory for a different reason, not for how he fell, but for how he stood back up. Kurt Browning. By 1992, Kurt Browning was already skating royalty. The first man to successfully land a quadruple jump in competition, a four-time world champion, and the pride of Canada, he arrived in Albertville carrying the kind of expectation that feels less like hope and more like inevitability. Gold was not just a possibility, it was the narrative everyone believed in. His programs were usually packed with daring triples and quads delivered with confidence and flair that made the impossible look routine. But months before the games, a severe back injury cast a long shadow over that dream. When Browning stepped onto Olympic ice, he was no longer the explosive risk-taker audiences were used to seeing. In the free skate, he visibly held back, scaling down the technical difficulty. A planned triple loop unraveled into a single. Then came the triple axel, the jump that demanded full commitment. He fell. The mistake was costly, not just in points, but in momentum. The podium began to drift out of reach with every compromised element. He ultimately finished 6th in achievement by most standards, yet far from the gold many had predicted. The Olympics would continue to elude him. Another costly fall during warm-up in 1994 deepened the narrative of unfinished business. Browning later stepped away from Olympic competition, leaving behind a legacy of innovation and brilliance, but also the haunting image of what might have been had his body held together at the one moment it mattered most. Did Kurt Browning's Olympic fall shock you too? If his 1992 moment still hits hard, make sure to like this video and subscribe for more unforgettable Olympic stories. Zhang Dan and Zhang Hao. They were hailed as the most technically daring pair in the world, synchronized, explosive, fearless. Zhang Dan and Zhang Hao entered Torino with a mission that bordered on historic ambition to land a throw quadruple salchow never before completed in Olympic competition. Their chemistry on the ice was surgical, their lifts seamless, their speed electric. Many believed they were poised not just to win, but to redefine what pairs skating could be. Then came the throw that froze the arena. Zhang Hao launched Zhang Dan nearly 10 feet into the air, a breathtaking arc of possibility. But the landing went catastrophically wrong. She crashed down into a painful split, the impact echoing across the rink. It looked devastating, the kind of fall that ends seasons, perhaps even careers. Officials, coaches, and spectators braced for withdrawal as the pair left the ice amid stunned silence. And yet after tense minutes that felt like hours, they returned. Against expectation and visible pain, Zhang Dan resumed the program. Every movement carried strain but also defiance. They completed the routine and ultimately claimed the silver medal, not the gold they had envisioned, but a result that felt almost secondary to the courage displayed. The failed quad prevented them from making history in the way they intended, yet their return to the ice became its own unforgettable chapter of Olympic resolve. Mandy Wutzel and Ingo Steuer. In Lillehammer, Mandy Wutzel and Ingo Steuer arrived with momentum and ambition burning beneath their blades. Only 2 years after the previous Winter Games and skating in an Olympics already thick with controversy and tension, the German pair were seen as serious contenders. Their partnership had been forged through risk-heavy elements and punishing throws routines so daring that commentators often noted how many times Wutzel had accidentally collided with her partner during training. They were fearless, aggressive, and determined to climb. Then came the moment no one expected. As the commentary casually referenced their history of hard impacts, reality struck with cruel timing. During their routine, Mandy lost control and crashed chin first onto the ice. The sound was sickening. She lay there for a heartbeat too long, the arena suspended in dread. When she struggled to breathe, Ingo immediately rushed to her side, lifting her and carrying her off the rink in a scene that felt more emergency than competition. Backstage, doctors confirmed she had suffered a deep cut to her chin that required stitches. Nothing was broken, they said, but she would not skate again that night. The pair withdrew from the competition, their Olympic run ending not in applause but in sterile medical light. Lillehammer became a reminder that in pairs, skating trust is absolute, risk is constant, and sometimes the line between brilliance and disaster is razor thin. Asada Mal. Long before Sochi Mao Asada had already rewritten the limits of women's figure skating. She was the only junior skater ever to land a triple axel in competition, and later the first senior woman to land 3 in a single event. The triple axel was not just a jump in her arsenal, it was her signature, her declaration of technical fearlessness. Heading into the 2014 Winter Olympics, expectations towered. Japan looked to her as a proven champion capable of seizing Olympic glory. But in Sochi, the very element that defined her brilliance became her undoing. In the short program, Asada faltered the triple axel, betraying her at the worst possible moment. The stumble sent her shockingly down the standings, far from medal contention. The fall echoed louder than the difficulty of the jump itself, and critics later argued that the judging focused heavily on the mistakes rather than the extraordinary risk she had taken. Meanwhile, in the men's event, bold technical ambition was celebrated when others succeeded. In the free skate, Asada delivered a powerful, emotionally charged performance, landing the triple axel cleanly and reminding the world of her mastery. It was a redemption of spirit, though not enough to reclaim a place on the podium. Sochi became a study in contrast of courage and consequence of risk and reward. Mao Asada left those games without a medal, but with her reputation as one of the most daring and technically gifted skaters of her generation firmly intact. Laetitia Hubert. She was only 17, skating on home soil wrapped in the electric energy of Albertville. Laetitia Hubert entered the 1992 Winter Olympics with the kind of support most athletes only dream about: an arena filled with French voices willing her toward history. In the short program, she delivered a performance that stunned observers. Clean combinations, strong marks, artistic confidence beyond her years. She placed 5th, suddenly within reach of the podium, and whispers of a miracle medal began to circulate through the stands. But Olympic ice has a way of magnifying pressure. Heading into the long program, Hubert knew she would need to take risks to climb higher. The crowd expected boldness. The moment demanded perfection. Instead, the night unraveled. She fell once, then again and again. 4 falls in total, along with visible errors across her elements, turned promise into heartbreak. Each stumble felt heavier than the last, the scoreboard shifting with brutal indifference as her medal hopes dissolved in real time. By the end of the program, she had dropped to 15th in the segment and 12th overall. The same arena that had roared with belief now sat in stunned quiet. What had begun as a breakthrough moment became a harsh lesson in Olympic volatility. For Laetitia Hubert, Albertville was not the fairy tale ending her nation imagined, but a reminder that on the grandest stage, momentum can change in a single unforgiving edge. Ty Babylonia and Randy Gardner. They were America's golden pair before they even touched Olympic ice in Lake Placid. Ty Babylonia and Randy Gardner carried the aura of champions, charismatic, powerful, and widely expected to contend for gold. 4 years earlier, heartbreak had followed them, and 1980 was meant to be redemption. The chemistry was undeniable, the lifts polished the belief almost tangible. The United States watched with anticipation, ready for a triumphant return to the top of pairs skating. But the unraveling began before the competition officially started. Gardner had arrived already nursing pulled leg muscles, an injury that worsened during rehearsal. During the final warm-up, what should have been routine became alarming. He began to fall not from mistimed jumps, but because his legs simply gave out beneath him. Pain-killing injections meant to stabilize him instead left parts of his leg numb. Observers quickly realized this was not a normal mistake. His body could no longer support the elements required. Unable to bear weight or safely execute lifts, the pair withdrew before their Olympic program even began. The dream ended not under the spotlight of performance, but in the quiet devastation of injury. Lake Placid became a symbol not of failure, but of cruel timing, a reminder that sometimes the most catastrophic Olympic fall happens before the music ever starts. Did Ty Babylonia and Randy Gardner's heartbreaking withdrawal in 1980 change the Olympic story forever? Share your thoughts in the comments. We want to hear your take on that unforgettable moment. Barbara Underhill and Paul Martini. They were young, dynamic, and undeniably photogenic. The Canadian pair many believed had a legitimate shot at the Olympic podium in Sarajevo. Barbara Underhill and Paul Martini skated with speed and boldness, blending athletic precision with theatrical energy. In the lead-up to the 1984 Games, expectations swelled around them. They had the look, the momentum, and the technical firepower to challenge the world's best. Then came the fall that shifted everything. During their Olympic performance, Underhill slipped and slid into Martini at close proximity, tangling their timing and bringing both crashing down. It was sudden, awkward, and impossible to recover from competitively. Commentators pointed to their spacing and decision to attempt the move under those conditions, but in the Olympic spotlight, explanations offered little comfort. The mistake sent them spiraling down the standings, their medal hopes dissolving in seconds. They left Sarajevo without the podium finish. Many had predicted the disappointment, heavy and public. Yet what followed was not retreat, but resurgence. Just weeks later at the World Figure Skating Championships, Underhill and Martini returned with sharpened focus and claimed the world title, becoming the first Canadians in history to do so in pairs. The Olympic fall became a painful chapter, but not the final word in their story. Kamila Valieva. She arrived in Beijing as the next unstoppable force of figure skating, young elastic, seemingly untouchable. Kamila Valieva had already dazzled the world with her quads and ethereal extensions, playing a decisive role in securing gold for the Russian Olympic Committee in the team event. Analysts spoke of domination, of a new era defined by her technical supremacy. She skated with the cool precision of someone who appeared born for Olympic immortality. Then the narrative fractured. Before the team medals were even awarded, news broke that Valieva had failed a doping test taken prior to the Games. The revelation detonated across the Olympic Village and beyond, casting a shadow over what had seemed like inevitable triumph. After intense deliberation, she was controversially allowed to compete in the women's individual event, but the atmosphere had changed. Every practice, every glance, every step onto the ice carried a weight far heavier than choreography. In the free skate, that weight became visible. Valieva stumbled and fell multiple times, including on her quad attempts, the composure that once defined her suddenly fragile. Her score dropped dramatically, leaving her off the podium in 4th place. Later, she was officially disqualified and the team gold was downgraded. What began as a coronation in Beijing unraveled into one of the most scrutinized Olympic episodes in recent memory, her performance forever intertwined with controversy and consequence. Midori Ito. By 1992, Midori Ito was already a phenomenon. She had shattered expectations with her explosive athleticism, becoming one of the very few women in the world capable of landing a triple axel in competition. Entering Albertville, she was widely expected to challenge for gold. Her jumps were towering, her speed unmatched, her style powerful rather than delicate, a force of momentum that could overwhelm any program. But tension crept in even before competition began. During practice, French skater Surya Bonali executed a backflip, a move banned in Olympic competition, and nearly collided with Ito mid-run. The close call rattled the ice, and some believed Ito's composure. When it came time for her competitive program, she struggled to regain complete control. In the short program and free skate, key jumps faltered. She attempted the triple lutz and could not hold it. She went for the triple axel and fell. The risk that defined her greatness also magnified her mistakes. Yet Ito did not retreat from the challenge. Later in the free skate, she attempted the triple axel again, and this time she landed it cleanly, becoming the first woman to successfully land the jump at the Olympic Games. It was a historic achievement, but not enough to secure gold. She ultimately earned the silver medal, leaving Albertville with both a groundbreaking milestone and the lingering sense of how narrowly Olympic perfection can slip away. Shisan. Zhu Yi. Born Beverly Zhu in California, she once represented the promise of American figure skating. But in a decision that stirred emotion on 2 continents, she chose to compete for China, embracing her parents' homeland, changing her name to Zhu Yi and stepping into a narrative far larger than sport. When she was selected for the 2022 Beijing Winter Olympics, team expectations were immense, and so was scrutiny. Competing on home ice for China meant not just skating for medals, but carrying national pride under an unforgiving spotlight. In the team event, the pressure became painfully visible. During the short program and free skate, Zhu struggled. She fell multiple times, including a jarring crash into the boards that sent a hush through the arena. Each mistake compounded the weight she already carried. China, initially positioned for a podium finish, slipped from 3rd to 5th in the standings. What was meant to be a triumphant homecoming turned into a public unraveling broadcast to millions. The aftermath unfolded just as dramatically online. On Chinese social media platforms, criticism surged, targeting her performances and even her fluency in Mandarin. The conversation expanded beyond skating, touching on identity, loyalty, and expectation. Beijing 2022 became not just an Olympic debut, but a defining chapter in Zhu Yi's career, one where athletic missteps collided with national sentiment in the brightest and harshest spotlight of all. Tonya Harding. Before scandal would one day eclipse her name, Tonya Harding was pure athletic fire on American ice. In 1991, she became U.S. national champion and one of the only women in the world capable of landing the triple axel in competition, a jump so difficult it separated contenders from legends. Heading into Albertville in 1992, she was widely considered a legitimate threat for Olympic gold. Her power, speed, and fearless approach made her unlike the refined balletic image many associated with the sport. She was raw talent, undeniable, and unapologetic. But behind the scenes, turbulence brewed. Reports suggested she arrived only days before competition, still battling jet lag. Training sessions were described as inconsistent. Then came a shoulder injury during practice, further destabilizing her preparation. By the time she stepped onto Olympic ice, the confidence that once fueled her seemed fractured. In the short program, she fell. In the free skate, she fell again. The triple axel that had elevated her reputation became a high-risk gamble under immense pressure, and deductions mounted quickly. Instead of standing atop the podium, Harding finished fourth, painfully close yet unmistakably short of the medal she had envisioned. While her rival Nancy Kerrigan secured bronze, Harding left Albertville with opportunity slipping through her fingers. The 1992 Games marked a turning point, a moment when promise and pressure collided publicly, setting the stage for a narrative that would grow far more complicated in the years to come. Barbara Fusar-Poli and Maurizio Margaglio. 4 years earlier, they had taken Olympic bronze amid controversy and then stepped away from competition. But when the 2006 Winter Games were awarded to their home country, Barbara Fusar-Poli and Maurizio Margaglio laced up their skates once more. Torino was not just another event, it was destiny calling them back. The crowd roared with every glide, every synchronized step. In the compulsory dance, they delivered flawlessly, finishing first and igniting hope that a fairy tale comeback was unfolding on Italian ice. Then came the original dance, and with it a moment that would freeze in Olympic memory. Near the end of the routine, Margaglio lost his footing. The slip was sudden and unforgiving, sending both skaters crashing down. Gasps echoed through the arena as their medal momentum evaporated. They dropped to 10th in that segment, the standings reshuffled in seconds. And then came the image that would define the night, Fusar-Poli's piercing glare at her partner, a look of shock, fury, and disbelief captured forever by the cameras. They rallied in the final segment, skating with urgency and control, but the damage had been done. The podium slipped away, and they ultimately finished 6th overall. Torino, which had begun as a triumphant homecoming, became a study in how quickly Olympic glory can fracture. The fall was brief, but the image and the tension it revealed endured long after the music stopped. Irina Slutskaya. By the time Torino arrived, Irina Slutskaya was already a towering figure in women's skating, a 7-time European champion and one of Russia's most decorated athletes. Her power, athleticism, and commanding presence made her the clear favorite for Olympic gold in 2006. She had overcome enormous personal trials in the years leading up to the Games, stepping away from Worlds in 2003 to care for her mother during multiple kidney transplants, all while battling her own health diagnosis of vasculitis. Even the fatigue caused by medication could not erase her dominance. When she captured another European title just weeks before the Olympics, the narrative seemed perfectly aligned for triumph. In the short program in Torino, she held steady, finishing second and keeping the gold within reach. Every edge, every extension radiated determination. But the free skate, the final battlefield, proved unforgiving. During a triple loop attempt, she fell. It was a single mistake, yet at the Olympic level, a single flaw can tilt destiny. The fall cost crucial points and the standings shifted. The gold slipped away, then the silver, leaving Slutskaya with bronze. For an athlete who had carried both national expectation and personal resilience on her shoulders, the result felt like a quiet heartbreak. Soon after the Games, she stepped away from competitive skating. Torino became not the crowning achievement many predicted, but the closing chapter of a remarkable career defined by strength, endurance, and a single moment when perfection gave way to gravity. Thank you for staying until the very end of Arina Slutskaya's story and watching with us. If you're still here, drop a 2 in the comments so we know you made it all the way through. Brady Tennell. Fresh off winning the US Figure Skating Championships, Brady Tennell arrived in Pyeongchang with quiet confidence and a reputation for consistency. She had already contributed strongly to Team USA's bronze medal in the team event, topping the women's category and proving she could handle Olympic pressure. Known for her clean technique and disciplined approach, Tennell carried the image of a skater who rarely faltered. For years, she reportedly had no memory of falling in competition. But the Olympic individual short program introduced a different reality. Just 30 seconds in after successfully completing her opening combination, Tennell prepared for a triple toe loop. The takeoff was there, the control was not. She slipped on the landing, the error abrupt and costly. It was the kind of mistake that shifts momentum instantly, especially on a stage where every fraction of a point matters. The fall disrupted the rhythm of her program and sent her down the standings. Though she recovered in the free skate with a stronger, cleaner performance, the early stumble proved difficult to overcome. Tennell ultimately finished 9th overall, still ahead of her American teammates, but outside the medal conversation. For a skater celebrated for steadiness, Pyeongchang became a reminder that even the most reliable edge can falter under Olympic lights, and that one small slip can echo far beyond the moment it happens. On Olympic ice, glory can rise in a second and disappear just as fast. If these unforgettable falls moved you, shocked you, or broke your heart, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss the next untold chapter from the world of sports history. Barbara Fusar-Poli and Maurizio Margaglio. 4 years earlier, they had taken Olympic bronze amid controversy and then stepped away from competition. But when the 2006 Winter Games were awarded to their home country, Barbara Fusar-Poli and Maurizio Margaglio laced up their skates once more. Torino was not just another event, it was destiny calling them back. The crowd roared with every glide, every synchronized step. In the compulsory dance, they delivered flawlessly, finishing first and igniting hope that a fairy tale comeback was unfolding on Italian ice. Then came the original dance, and with it a moment that would freeze in Olympic memory. Near the end of the routine, Margaglio lost his footing. The slip was sudden and unforgiving, sending both skaters crashing down. Gasps echoed through the arena as their medal momentum evaporated. They dropped to 10th in that segment, the standings reshuffled in seconds. And then came the image that would define the night, Fusar-Poli's piercing glare at her partner, a look of shock, fury, and disbelief captured forever by the cameras. They rallied in the final segment, skating with urgency and control, but the damage had been done. The podium slipped away, and they ultimately finished 6th overall. Torino, which had begun as a triumphant homecoming, became a study in how quickly Olympic glory can fracture. The fall was brief, but the image and the tension it revealed endured long after the music stopped. Irina Slutskaya. By the time Torino arrived, Irina Slutskaya was already a towering figure in women's skating, a 7-time European champion and one of Russia's most decorated athletes. Her power, athleticism, and commanding presence made her the clear favorite for Olympic gold in 2006. She had overcome enormous personal trials in the years leading up to the Games, stepping away from Worlds in 2003 to care for her mother during multiple kidney transplants, all while battling her own health diagnosis of vasculitis. Even the fatigue caused by medication could not erase her dominance. When she captured another European title just weeks before the Olympics, the narrative seemed perfectly aligned for triumph. In the short program in Torino, she held steady, finishing second and keeping the gold within reach. Every edge, every extension radiated determination. But the free skate, the final battlefield, proved unforgiving. During a triple loop attempt, she fell. It was a single mistake, yet at the Olympic level, a single flaw can tilt destiny. The fall cost crucial points and the standings shifted. The gold slipped away, then the silver, leaving Slutskaya with bronze. For an athlete who had carried both national expectation and personal resilience on her shoulders, the result felt like a quiet heartbreak. Soon after the Games, she stepped away from competitive skating. Torino became not the crowning achievement many predicted, but the closing chapter of a remarkable career defined by strength, endurance, and a single moment when perfection gave way to gravity. Thank you for staying until the very end of Arina Slutskaya's story and watching with us. If you're still here, drop a 2 in the comments so we know you made it all the way through. Brady Tennell. Fresh off winning the U.S. Figure Skating Championships, Brady Tennell arrived in Pyeongchang with quiet confidence and a reputation for consistency. She had already contributed strongly to Team USA's bronze medal in the team event, topping the women's category and proving she could handle Olympic pressure. Known for her clean technique and disciplined approach, Tennell carried the image of a skater who rarely faltered. For years, she reportedly had no memory of falling in competition. But the Olympic individual short program introduced a different reality. Just 30 seconds in after successfully completing her opening combination, Tennell prepared for a triple toe loop. The takeoff was there, the control was not. She slipped on the landing, the error abrupt and costly. It was the kind of mistake that shifts momentum instantly, especially on a stage where every fraction of a point matters. The fall disrupted the rhythm of her program and sent her down the standings. Though she recovered in the free skate with a stronger, cleaner performance, the early stumble proved difficult to overcome. Tennell ultimately finished 9th overall, still ahead of her American teammates, but outside the medal conversation. For a skater celebrated for steadiness, Pyeongchang became a reminder that even the most reliable edge can falter under Olympic lights, and that one small slip can echo far beyond the moment it happens. On Olympic ice, glory can rise in a second and disappear just as fast. If these unforgettable falls moved you, shocked you, or broke your heart, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss the next untold chapter from the world of sports history. What if one single misstep could erase a lifetime of sacrifice in the blink of an eye under the blinding lights of the Olympic arena where legends are crowned and history is written? Even the smallest mistake can turn glory into heartbreak. Today we uncover the top 10 devastating figure skating Olympic falls, the shocking slips, brutal crashes, and split-second errors that silenced roaring crowds and changed careers forever. Yulia Vyacheslavovna Lipnitskaya. In the winter of 2014, Russia did not merely host the Olympic Games, it unveiled a prodigy. Yulia Lipnitskaya arrived at the 2014 Winter Olympics as a 15-year-old phenomenon, slight in frame yet immense in presence. Draped in a haunting red coat during her now iconic Schindler's List program, she moved across the ice with an intensity that felt almost cinematic. Flexible beyond belief, spinning in tight, blinding rotations, she became the emotional epicenter of the Russian team event. The crowd roared not just in support, but in awe. When Russia secured team gold, Lipnitskaya stood as its youngest Olympic champion, transformed overnight into a national symbol. Her face, pale and focused, rarely betrayed nerves. Cameras lingered on her stillness before the music began, as if trying to decode the composure of someone so young, carrying so much expectation. Commentators spoke of destiny. The narrative seemed perfectly aligned, home Olympics teenage prodigy gold already around her neck. Yet beneath the triumph, whispers trailed quietly through the arena corridors. The pressure was immense, magnified by patriotic fervor and global scrutiny. In Sochi, she was not simply skating. She was performing under the weight of a nation's pride. When the individual competition began, Lipnitskaya entered as a favorite once more. The assumption was that team glory would translate seamlessly into personal triumph. Her short program kept her within reach, but it was the free skate that would determine everything. As she built speed into her triple salchow, an element she had executed countless times in training, the atmosphere tightened. She launched into the air rotation, sharp posture, compact. But the landing slipped from control. She felt the impact echoing louder because of the expectations surrounding her. The mistake proved costly in the unforgiving calculus of Olympic scoring. A second fall followed, and with it, the quiet realization that gold was slipping away. From projected champion, she dropped to 5th place. The arena that once thundered with certainty now hummed with disbelief. She completed the program, but the narrative had shifted irrevocably. In a sport where fractions define fate, the margin for error had vanished. Sochi remains a paradox in Lipnitskaya's story. She left with Team Gold, her name forever etched in Olympic history, yet the individual title eluded her. In 2017, she retired from competitive skating and later turned to coaching, guiding younger athletes who chase the same shimmering dream. Her Olympic chapter endures as both triumph and cautionary tale, a portrait of brilliance unveiled too early, of youth elevated to myth, and of how quickly the ice beneath a golden child can turn fragile under the brightest lights in the world. Michelle Kwan. At the turn of the millennium, figure skating had many stars, but only one reigning queen, Michelle Kwan. 5-time world champion, 9-time US champion, already an Olympic silver and bronze medalist. She did not simply compete, she commanded the ice with a presence that felt inevitable, almost mythic. Her skating was silk over steel, grace wrapped around discipline, a smile crafted like armor against pressure. To America, she was more than an athlete. She was unfinished destiny gliding toward its final golden chapter. By the time she arrived at the 2002 Winter Olympics, the narrative seemed written in advance. This was home soil. This was maturity meeting opportunity. 4 years earlier, gold had slipped through her grasp in Nagano, and the absence of that medal lingered like a silent echo behind every triumph that followed. Whispers trailed her through the Olympic Village that this might be her last true chance. The spotlight did not merely shine on her, it pressed down heavy with expectation, bright with national longing. When the music began for her long program in Salt Lake City, the arena transformed into a cathedral of anticipation. Each edge was steady, each extension deliberate, every movement echoing the polish of a champion who understood the magnitude of the moment. Then came the triple flip, a jump she had landed countless times before. She gathered speed, lifted into the air, and in a split second that would replay endlessly across television screens, the blade betrayed her balance. She fell. It was not chaotic or dramatic, but it was decisive, the kind of mistake that shifts Olympic history in a heartbeat. She rose almost immediately, the composure intact, the performance carried through with dignity and control. There was no visible panic, no unraveling. She skated the remainder of the program with the poise that had defined her entire career, as if refusing to let a single error dismantle years of brilliance. Yet Olympic scoring is clinical, immune to narrative and sentiment. The points told a colder story. Gold slipped away. Silver followed. When the final standings were posted, Michelle Kwan stood in bronze position. On the podium, she wore her medal with grace. Her expression measured her legacy already secured in countless other arenas. History would remember her as one of the most decorated and influential skaters the sport had ever known, a standard against which future generations would be measured. And yet woven into the fabric of her legend is that quiet moment in Salt Lake City when perfection faltered and destiny shifted course, leaving behind a career luminous and celebrated but marked forever by a single unforgettable fall. If Michelle Kwan's fall still breaks your heart, comment number 1 for Michelle Kwan, a legend of grace even without gold. Jeremy Abbott. By the time the world arrived in Sochi, Jeremy Abbott was no stranger to Olympic pressure. A veteran of the 2010 Games, a multiple-time US champion, he carried himself with the quiet intensity of a skater who had matured through disappointment and refinement. At the 2014 Winter Olympics, he was not labeled the overwhelming favorite, but insiders believed he had the artistry and technical arsenal to land high on the leaderboard. His skating was known for depth and emotional nuance, a blend of athleticism and vulnerability that made him a connoisseur's competitor. When he stepped onto the ice for the men's short program, the arena lights felt unforgiving, sharp as interrogation lamps. The opening choreography flowed with promise, edges clean, posture confident. Then came the quadruple jump, the high-risk element that separates contenders from the rest. He launched upward with commitment, rotating into the air with the precision he had trained for countless times. But the landing never arrived the way it was meant to. Instead, he came down hard and slid violently into the rink boards. The impact echoed through the arena, a jarring collision of ambition and reality. For a split second, he lay motionless on the ice, the crowd collectively holding its breath. It was more than a fall. It was a crash that shattered the rhythm of the program and sent shockwaves through the competition. Yet what followed became its own quiet act of defiance. Abbott pushed himself up, steadied his breath, and resumed skating. There was no surrender in his movements, only resolve. He completed the program with determination etched across his face, finishing not as a medal threat but as a competitor who refused to let a single mistake define the rest of his performance. The scores reflected the damage done by the fall, removing him from any serious podium contention. He left Sochi without an individual medal, though he had contributed to the US team bronze earlier in the games. What remained was the image of a skater who crashed into the barrier literally and figuratively and still chose to stand. In the unforgiving arithmetic of Olympic figure skating, redemption does not always come in gold or silver. Sometimes it is found in the simple stubborn act of rising after impact and finishing what you began. Zhang Dan and Zhang Hao. In 2006, under the vaulted lights of the Palavela Arena, China presented a pair whose ambition felt larger than the rink itself, Zhang Dan and Zhang Hao. They arrived at the 2006 Winter Olympics not merely to compete, but to attempt something no pair had ever successfully landed on Olympic ice, a throw quadruple salchow. Their skating was powerful, synchronized, almost mechanical in its precision, yet charged with the daring of pioneers who believed history was within reach. Through the early elements of their free skate, they moved with controlled intensity, every lift crisp, every step deliberate. Commentators spoke of their technical superiority, of how they had redefined what pair skating could demand from the human body. Then came the moment that would define the night. Zhang Hao launched Zhang Dan into the air with explosive force, sending her soaring nearly 10 feet above the ice. For a heartbeat, she seemed suspended beyond gravity itself, rotating in a blur of velocity and risk. The descent, however, did not align with the dream. She came down awkwardly, the impact driving her into a painful split that rippled through the arena with audible shock. The fall was brutal, the kind that silences even seasoned crowds. Zhang Dan remained on the ice, her face tight with pain. The routine abruptly halted. Officials and coaches hovered nearby, and for several tense minutes it appeared their Olympic quest had ended in that single devastating attempt. It was the kind of risk that can elevate legends or fracture them in full public view. Then, in a twist that felt almost cinematic, the pair returned. Against expectation, Zhang Dan chose to continue. The music resumed, and they completed the remainder of the program with a fierceness that transformed pain into performance. Each element that followed carried the weight of resilience, as though they were skating not just for medals but for redemption. The audience, once stunned, rose in awe at the sheer will unfolding before them. When the scores were posted, they stood with silver medals just shy of the gold they had chased with unprecedented ambition. The fall had cost them the historic breakthrough they sought, yet it also carved their names into Olympic memory in a different way. They did not rewrite the record books that night, but they redefined courage on the ice, proving that sometimes the most unforgettable legacy is not the jump that lands perfectly, but the one that nearly breaks you, and the choice to rise anyway. If the fearless comeback of Zhang Dan and Zhang Hao after that devastating fall moved you, hit like and subscribe so you don't miss our next powerful stories. Kurt Browning. Before the Olympic lights ever found him, Kurt Browning had already altered the geometry of men's figure skating. He was the first to land a ratified quadruple jump in competition, a pioneer who turned impossibility into headline. By the time he arrived at the 1992 Winter Olympics, he was not simply a contender, he was a symbol of technical revolution. Canada looked at him and saw gold already shimmering in the distance. But destiny rarely travels a straight line. Months before Albertville, Browning suffered a serious back injury, one that quietly reshaped his preparation. It was said that his training sessions became cautious, that the daring programs packed with triples and quads had to be recalibrated. On Olympic ice, the bold architect of the quadruple was forced to scale back, replacing his usual arsenal with safer, simpler elements. For a skater built on risk and innovation, restraint felt almost unnatural. During his free program, the tension was visible beneath the choreography. He attempted a triple axel, the jump that often separates dream from reality. The takeoff lacked its usual snap, and the landing betrayed him. He fell, the mistake echoing louder because of the expectations surrounding him. Other planned triples unraveled into doubles, a triple loop dissolved into a single. The performance, once imagined as a triumphant coronation, became a struggle against physical limitation and mounting pressure. He ultimately placed 6th, a respectable finish under the circumstances, yet far from the gold so many had predicted. The Olympic stage, which seemed destined to confirm his legacy, instead exposed its fragility. Browning would return in 1994 only to endure another costly fall during warm-up that haunted his campaign once again. The Games proved stubborn, resisting the narrative of redemption that often defines sporting myth. And yet Browning's story was never solely about Olympic medals. He remained one of the sport's most influential innovators, his quadruple jump a permanent mark on skating history. The Olympics may have denied him the golden ending, but they also revealed something quieter and perhaps more enduring. Even pioneers, even revolutionaries, must confront the limits of the body as fiercely as they challenge the limits of the sport. Mandy Wutzel and Ingo Steuer. In 1994, as the Winter Games unfolded in Lillehammer, Germany placed its hopes on a pair forged through discipline and bruising ambition, Mandy Wutzel and Ingo Steuer. They entered the 1994 Winter Olympics with momentum and expectation, their partnership built on daring throws and razor-sharp timing. Commentators spoke of their medal potential, of their technical confidence, of how seamlessly they moved as one unit across the ice. They were seen as climbers on the brink of something greater, poised to carve their names into Olympic memory. Yet even before their decisive skate, there had been murmurs about the risks they took in training. It was said that their preparation had not been gentle, that falls had been part of the cost of pushing boundaries. Ironically, just as a broadcaster referenced the number of concussions Steuer had endured over the years, fate intervened in the cruelest timing imaginable. The program was in motion, the choreography unfolding with speed and lift when balance shifted in a fraction of a second. Wutzel plummeted forward chin first into the unforgiving surface. The sound of impact cut through the arena like a snapped wire. For a moment she lay there stunned, the routine shattered mid-flight. The fall was not theatrical, it was visceral. The cameras captured the shock in Steuer's eyes as he rushed to her side. Blood became visible against the pale ice, a stark contrast that silenced the crowd into horrified stillness. Steuer lifted her carefully and carried her off the rink, the competition abandoned in an instant. Behind the scenes, medical staff confirmed a deep cut to her chin that required stitches. Nothing was broken, but the injury was severe enough to end their Olympic campaign on the spot. The pair withdrew their medal hopes, dissolving in the span of a single miscalculation. It was the kind of ending no athlete scripts, abrupt and merciless under the glare of global attention. Lillehammer would move on, champions crowned and history recorded, yet that image endured, a skater carried from the ice, ambition halted by gravity and blood. Wutzel and Steuer's Olympic chapter closed not with applause but with urgency and uncertainty. In a sport that demands elegance and illusion, their fall revealed the raw vulnerability beneath the glittering costumes, a reminder that behind every lift and throw lies the constant shadow of risk waiting for its moment to strike. Asada Mao. Before Sochi ever began, Mao Asada was already a phenomenon wrapped in quiet determination. She was not simply a champion, she was a risk-taker in a sport that punishes hesitation. As the only junior skater ever to land a triple axel and the first senior woman to execute 3-in-1 competition, she carried a reputation built on courage. The triple axel was not just a jump in her program, it was her signature, her declaration that artistry and audacity could coexist on the same sheet of ice. Arriving at the 2014 Winter Olympics, expectations swirled around her like winter wind, heavy with the promise of redemption after past Olympic disappointment. There were whispers that Sochi would be her final Olympic chapter, that everything she had endured, rivalries, near misses, relentless scrutiny, had led to this stage. The spotlight followed her every glide in the short program, and when she prepared for the triple axel, the arena seemed to tighten in anticipation. She launched into the air with the same fearless commitment that had defined her career, but the landing betrayed her. She fell. The gasp from the crowd felt immediate, collective, almost protective. A jump she had conquered countless times now became the crack in her Olympic dream. The damage was not merely physical, it was mathematical and psychological. In a competition measured by fractions, the fall proved devastating. Another attempt in the free skate faltered as well, and suddenly the medal conversation moved on without her. Critics debated the judging, some suggesting the scores weighed her mistakes more heavily than the technical difficulty warranted, especially in a year when risk was celebrated elsewhere. Yet on the scoreboard, the result stood firm. The podium slipped from reach. Still, what followed was a performance that transformed disappointment into defiance. In her free skate, Asada delivered a program of extraordinary depth and technical content, landing elements with renewed focus and skating with an emotional clarity that transcended placement. The applause was thunderous, not because she had won, but because she had refused to retreat. She finished outside the medals, yet left the ice with a different kind of triumph, one rooted in resilience rather than hardware. Sochi remains a paradox in Mao Asada's legacy, a stage where her greatest weapon turned against her, yet also a night that revealed her unbreakable spirit. The triple axel both built her legend and complicated it, a symbol of the fine line between brilliance and heartbreak. In the unforgiving glare of Olympic light, she proved that greatness is not only measured in medals, but in the courage to attempt what others fear and to rise when that very courage sends you crashing back to earth. Laetitia Hubert. In 1992, the Winter Games arrived in the French Alps with cinematic grandeur, and among the young faces carrying national hope was Laetitia Hubert. Only 17 years old, she stepped onto the ice at the 1992 Winter Olympics with the kind of wide-eyed determination that turns prodigies into symbols. Competing on home soil is a rare privilege, and in Albertville, the roar of the crowd did not merely greet her, it embraced her. France saw in her a rising star poised to shine under the brightest lights. Her short program unfolded like a revelation. Clean combinations, confident edges, artistic control beyond her years. When the marks appeared, they stunned even seasoned commentators. Strong technical scores, impressive artistic impressions. She placed fifth, suddenly within striking distance of the podium. The narrative shifted overnight. This was no longer just participation, this was possibility. In cafes and living rooms across France, conversations turned from cautious optimism to genuine belief. A medal on home ice felt almost within reach. But Olympic figure skating is a test not only of skill, but of endurance under unbearable expectation. Entering the long program, Hubert understood the stakes. To stand on the podium, she would have to deliver the skate of her life. The arena pulsed with anticipation as she began building speed into her opening combination. For a moment, everything seemed aligned. Then the first fall came abrupt and unforgiving. A misjudged landing fractured the rhythm. The second fall followed, then a third and a fourth. Each mistake echoed louder than the last, the weight of the moment pressing down with merciless force. The crowd, once electric, grew hushed in shared heartbreak. This was not a collapse born of carelessness, but of ambition meeting Olympic intensity. Every skater understands how thin the margin can be, how a fraction of hesitation can unravel months of preparation. Hubert fought to complete the program, but the errors were too many. When the final standings were posted, she had dropped to 15th in the free skate and 12th overall. Her medal dream dissolved in the cold arithmetic of scoring. Albertville crowned champions that year, yet for many in France, the image that lingered was that of a young skater standing in the aftermath of shattered expectation. Laetitia Hubert's Olympic story became a portrait of promise tested under national spotlight, a reminder that performing at home can magnify both triumph and tragedy. In the glow of the Alps beneath flags and applause, she experienced the fragile line between glory and gravity, where a single night can redefine the arc of a career. Ty Babylonia and Randy Gardner. In the golden glow of American figure skating's late 1970s renaissance, Ty Babylonia and Randy Gardner stood as its most glamorous ambassadors. They were elegance and power intertwined, a pair whose chemistry felt effortless and whose lifts seemed to defy gravity itself. By the time the 1980 Winter Olympics arrived on home soil, they were not merely contenders, they were favorites. The crowd expected artistry, the nation expected gold. Their names were spoken with the certainty reserved for champions already written into history. Yet beneath the polished exterior, there were whispers long before competition day. It was said that Gardner had been battling a leg injury, a pulled muscle that refused to fully heal. In elite sport, pain is often treated as background noise, something to be managed rather than obeyed. As Lake Placid filled with anticipation, those closest to the pair knew the margin for error had narrowed. Warm-ups are typically routine, a final rehearsal before the spotlight sharpens. That morning, however, routine dissolved into something far more ominous. During practice, as they prepared for lifts that demanded absolute stability, Gardner's leg betrayed him. He faltered. He fell. At first glance, it looked like a typical misstep, but observers quickly sensed something was wrong. His leg appeared numb, unable to support his weight. Reports later revealed he had received pain-killing injections in an attempt to compete, a desperate measure that dulled sensation but also stripped away control. The ice, indifferent and unforgiving, exposed the truth in seconds. He collapsed again during the final warm-up, the strength simply not there. Babylonia watched as her partner struggled, the Olympic dream unraveling before the music even had a chance to play. Officials, coaches, and medical staff converged, and the decision that followed was both inevitable and devastating. They withdrew from the competition. No program, no performance, no chance to fight for the medal they had chased for years. For spectators who had waited for their moment, the absence was deafening. The rink lights shone on empty expectation. In Olympic history, there are falls that happen mid-performance etched into replay reels, but this was a different kind of heartbreak, a fall before the first note, before the first glide. Ty Babylonia and Randy Gardner left Lake Placid not with defeat on the scoreboard, but with something more haunting, the knowledge that their final Olympic chapter closed without ever truly beginning their story, suspended in the fragile space between readiness and reality. Thank you for staying until the end and watching our video about Ty Babylonia and Randy Gardner. Leave a 2 in the comments if you're still here with us. Barbara Underhill and Paul Martini. In 1984, as the Winter Games unfolded in Sarajevo, Canada placed its faith in a pair that seemed sculpted for Olympic glory, Barbara Underhill and Paul Martini. They were striking fast, magnetic on the ice. Commentators admired their speed and natural chemistry, noting that they had a legitimate shot at any medal on the podium at the 1984 Winter Olympics. Their skating carried both elegance and daring, a balance that suggested they were ready for the sport's grandest stage. As their program began, there was an air of confidence, the kind that comes from years of shared training and synchronized instinct. The early elements unfolded with intensity, blades carving clean arcs into the ice. Yet in pair skating, proximity is everything, and even a fraction of miscalculation can prove catastrophic. During one crucial sequence, their closeness, once their greatest strength, turned into vulnerability. Underhill slipped beneath Martini at the wrong moment, disrupting the timing and tangling their momentum. In seconds, balance gave way to chaos. They fell together, the impact abrupt and jarring. It was not a subtle stumble, but a visible unraveling, the kind that drains the energy from an arena in an instant. Observers later suggested that the risk of attempting the move so tightly aligned may have contributed to the error. On Olympic ice, ambition and precision must coexist perfectly. When they drift apart, gravity takes over. The mistake cost them dearly, pushing them far from medal contention and leaving them to complete the program under the shadow of what had just occurred. They left Sarajevo at what felt like the lowest point of their partnership. For athletes who had carried national expectation, the disappointment was sharp and public. Yet what followed in the weeks after the Games transformed the narrative. Rather than retreat, Underhill and Martini returned to competition with renewed resolve. At the 1984 World Championships, they delivered performances that were focused, fearless, and refined by the lessons of Olympic heartbreak. There they achieved what no Canadian pair had accomplished before capturing the world title and rewriting the ending that Sarajevo had denied them. Their Olympic fall remains etched into memory not simply as a mistake, but as a turning point. In the unforgiving theater of the Winter Games, they experienced how quickly promise can collapse. Yet their story did not end on the ice in Sarajevo. It evolved into something more enduring, a testament to resilience, to partnership under pressure, and to the rare ability to transform a devastating fall into the foundation of historic triumph. If these devastating Olympic moments touched your heart, shocked you, or reminded you how fragile greatness can be, don't let the story end here. Hit like to support our channel, subscribe for more powerful and emotional sports stories, and make sure to turn on the notification bell so you never miss the next unforgettable chapter on ice. Chapter on ice. Chapter on ice. Ty Babylonia and Randy Gardner. In the golden glow of American figure skating's late 1970s renaissance, Ty Babylonia and Randy Gardner stood as its most glamorous ambassadors. They were elegance and power intertwined, a pair whose chemistry felt effortless and whose lifts seemed to defy gravity itself. By the time the 1980 Winter Olympics arrived on home soil, they were not merely contenders, they were favorites. The crowd expected artistry, the nation expected gold. Their names were spoken with the certainty reserved for champions already written into history. Yet beneath the polished exterior, there were whispers long before competition day. It was said that Gardner had been battling a leg injury, a pulled muscle that refused to fully heal. In elite sport, pain is often treated as background noise, something to be managed rather than obeyed. As Lake Placid filled with anticipation, those closest to the pair knew the margin for error had narrowed. Warm-ups are typically routine, a final rehearsal before the spotlight sharpens. That morning, however, routine dissolved into something far more ominous. During practice, as they prepared for lifts that demanded absolute stability, Gardner's leg betrayed him. He faltered, he fell. At first glance, it looked like a typical misstep, but observers quickly sensed something was wrong. His leg appeared numb, unable to support his weight. Reports later revealed he had received pain-killing injections in an attempt to compete, a desperate measure that dulled sensation but also stripped away control. The ice, indifferent and unforgiving, exposed the truth in seconds. He collapsed again during the final warm-up, the strength simply not there. Babylonia watched as her partner struggled, the Olympic dream unraveling before the music even had a chance to play. Officials, coaches, and medical staff converged, and the decision that followed was both inevitable and devastating. They withdrew from the competition. No program, no performance, no chance to fight for the medal they had chased for years. For spectators who had waited for their moment, the absence was deafening. The rink lights shone on empty expectation. In Olympic history, there are falls that happen mid-performance etched into replay reels, but this was a different kind of heartbreak, a fall before the first note, before the first glide. Ty Babylonia and Randy Gardner left Lake Placid not with defeat on the scoreboard, but with something more haunting, the knowledge that their final Olympic chapter closed without ever truly beginning their story, suspended in the fragile space between readiness and reality. Thank you for staying until the end and watching our video about Ty Babylonia and Randy Gardner. Leave a 2 in the comments if you're still here with us. Barbara Underhill and Paul Martini. In 1984, as the Winter Games unfolded in Sarajevo, Canada placed its faith in a pair that seemed sculpted for Olympic glory, Barbara Underhill and Paul Martini. They were striking fast, magnetic on the ice. Commentators admired their speed and natural chemistry, noting that they had a legitimate shot at any medal on the podium at the 1984 Winter Olympics. Their skating carried both elegance and daring, a balance that suggested they were ready for the sport's grandest stage. As their program began, there was an air of confidence, the kind that comes from years of shared training and synchronized instinct. The early elements unfolded with intensity, blades carving clean arcs into the ice. Yet in pair skating, proximity is everything, and even a fraction of miscalculation can prove catastrophic. During one crucial sequence, their closeness, once their greatest strength, turned into vulnerability. Underhill slipped beneath Martini at the wrong moment, disrupting the timing and tangling their momentum. In seconds, balance gave way to chaos. They fell together, the impact abrupt and jarring. It was not a subtle stumble, but a visible unraveling, the kind that drains the energy from an arena in an instant. Observers later suggested that the risk of attempting the move so tightly aligned may have contributed to the error. On Olympic ice, ambition and precision must coexist perfectly. When they drift apart, gravity takes over. The mistake cost them dearly, pushing them far from medal contention and leaving them to complete the program under the shadow of what had just occurred. They left Sarajevo at what felt like the lowest point of their partnership. For athletes who had carried national expectation, the disappointment was sharp in public. Yet what followed in the weeks after the Games transformed the narrative. Rather than retreat, Underhill and Martini returned to competition with renewed resolve. At the 1984 World Championships, they delivered performances that were focused, fearless, and refined by the lessons of Olympic heartbreak. There they achieved what no Canadian pair had accomplished before capturing the world title and rewriting the ending that Sarajevo had denied them. Their Olympic fall remains etched into memory not simply as a mistake, but as a turning point. In the unforgiving theater of the Winter Games, they experienced how quickly promise can collapse. Yet their story did not end on the ice in Sarajevo. It evolved into something more enduring, a testament to resilience, to partnership under pressure, and to the rare ability to transform a devastating fall into the foundation of historic triumph. If these devastating Olympic moments touched your heart, shocked you, or reminded you how fragile greatness can be, don't let the story end here. Hit like to support our channel, subscribe for more powerful and emotional sports stories, and make sure to turn on the notification bell so you never miss the next unforgettable chapter on ice. Chapter on ice. Chapter on ice.
Oh, it's Saturday! Oh, it's Saturday! Honey, and a hot cha-cha!
What if the kids who made the world laugh were hiding some of the darkest stories behind the scenes? The Little Rascals, Our Gang. 1922 cast once ruled Hollywood with innocence and joy, but their real lives tell a completely different story. From fame to tragedy, every single one of them faced shocking endings. And the truth behind what happened is far more disturbing than anyone expected. Spanky McFarland. He wasn't just another child on screen, he was the voice, the attitude, the leader everyone followed. With a single look or a sharp line, Spanky could take control of any scene and make it unforgettable. For millions of viewers, he was the Little Rascals. But behind that confidence and charm was a reality far more complicated than anyone could see. George Spanky McFarland was born in 1928 in Dallas, Texas, and by the age of 3 he was already stepping into a world most children could never understand. His natural presence, quick thinking, and bold personality made him stand out instantly. As the unofficial leader of the gang, Spanky became the face of the series, shaping its humor and energy. Fame came early and it came fast, and for a while it seemed like it would carry him forever. But childhood fame has a way of freezing people in time. As George grew older, the world refused to see him as anything other than the little boy they remembered. In 1949, he married Paula Jean Wilkinson, hoping to build a life away from the cameras. After that marriage ended, he remarried and became a father of 3, trying again to create something stable and real. From the outside, it looked like he had moved on, but inside, the weight of his past never really left. Those who knew him best began to notice the quiet struggle. At public appearances and reunion events, George would smile, laugh, and slip back into the role people expected. He joked about his past, played along with the nostalgia, and gave audiences exactly what they wanted. But behind that familiar charm was a man who sometimes seemed exhausted, someone still trying to separate his real identity from the character that had defined his entire life. On June 30th, 1993, George Spanky McFarland died at his home in Grapevine, Texas after suffering a heart attack. He was 64 years old. His body was cremated, and although plans were made to honor him, recognition came slowly and quietly. At the time of his death, his net worth was estimated at around $500,000. Yet his true legacy wasn't measured in money. It was the lasting image of a child who led with confidence and a man who spent a lifetime trying to step out of a shadow that never stopped following him. Carl Switzer. Do you remember that squeaky voice, the stubborn little boy with the cowlick who sang like he didn't care what anyone thought? He made millions laugh. But his ending was nothing like the joy he gave the world, and what happened at the very end still raises questions to this day. Carl Alfalfa Switzer was born in 1927 in a small town in Illinois. At just 8 years old, he became Alfalfa, the off-key singer, the hopeless romantic, the kid people laughed at but couldn't forget. By the late 1930s, he wasn't just another child actor. He had become one of the most recognizable faces in America, even surpassing Spanky in popularity. But fame that early doesn't come without consequences. At first, it looked like he had escaped the curse. In 1954, Carl married Diana Collingwood, a wealthy heiress. Suddenly, he had money, stability, and a family, including a young son. For a moment, it felt like a second chance, a happy ending for a former child star. But that illusion didn't last long. By 1957, the marriage collapsed into divorce, and Carl found himself struggling again, taking whatever work he could, dog training, hunting, guide jobs, anything to survive. Then things took a darker turn. In 1958, he was mysteriously shot in the arm while sitting in his car outside a bar. The case was never solved. Months later, he was arrested for illegally cutting down pine trees to sell as Christmas trees, leaving him on probation and buried in financial trouble. The boy who once made America laugh was now a man slowly losing control of his life. And then came the night that changed everything. On January 21, 1959, Carl confronted a man he once called a friend over a small debt, reportedly just $50. What should have been a simple argument quickly escalated into a violent struggle inside a house in Mission Hills. In the chaos, a .38 revolver was fired. The bullet tore through Carl's body, rupturing a major artery. He was rushed to the hospital, but at 7:27 p.m., Carl Alfalfa Switzer was pronounced dead. He was only 31 years old. Authorities ruled the shooting as self-defense, but witnesses later questioned that conclusion, leaving behind a mystery that still lingers. He was buried at Hollywood Forever Cemetery, his gravestone marked with a hunting dog and a Masonic symbol. A quiet, almost forgotten ending for someone who once stood at the center of America's laughter. And the most heartbreaking detail of all, at the time of his death, Carl Switzer's net worth was essentially zero. The boy who once had everything died with almost nothing except a story that still doesn't feel complete. William Thomas Jr. He wasn't the loudest, and he didn't need to be. With just a few words, a unique voice, and that unforgettable look, Buckwheat became one of the most recognizable faces in the Little Rascals. People laughed, repeated his lines, and never forgot him. But behind that gentle presence was a life that slowly drifted into silence. Billy Buckwheat Thomas was born in 1931 in Los Angeles, California, and by the age of 4, he stepped into the role that would define him forever. As Buckwheat, he brought something different to the screen, a quiet, shy energy mixed with a voice that audiences instantly recognized. He quickly became one of the most talked about characters in the series. But while the world saw charm and humor, Billy himself was growing up inside a spotlight that didn't always feel kind. As the years passed, he tried to build a life away from that image. He married and had a child, hoping to find stability beyond the fame of his childhood. But like many former child stars, the transition wasn't easy. The marriage eventually ended in divorce, and Billy made a quiet decision: he stepped away from acting. Instead of chasing attention, he moved behind the scenes, working at Technicolor, staying connected to the industry without standing in front of it. Yet the past never fully let go. Stories from the early studio days began to surface, unconfirmed but unsettling. Some claimed that during filming he had occasionally been given syrup containing mild sedatives to keep him calm during long shoots. Nothing was ever officially proven, but those rumors followed him for years. People close to Billy later noticed signs of nervous tension and trembling in his hands, as if something from those early years had stayed with him longer than anyone expected. On October 10, 1980, Billy Thomas died suddenly at his home in Los Angeles after suffering a heart attack. He was just 49 years old. What makes his ending even more emotional is what happened shortly before. Only 10 weeks earlier, he had appeared at a reunion honoring the Little Rascals. As he stood on stage, the audience gave him a powerful standing ovation, and for a moment the world remembered him not as a forgotten actor, but as someone who had truly mattered. When he passed, he left behind an estimated net worth of around $150,000, but more than that, he left behind a quiet, complicated story of a boy who made millions smile while carrying a life most people never saw. Out of all the stories so far, where does William Thomas Jr. rank for you? Comment below. I'm reading every single one. Stymie Beard. He didn't need to shout to stand out. With calm confidence, sharp intelligence, and that iconic derby hat, Stymie was the kid who always seemed one step ahead of everyone else. While others brought chaos, he brought control. On screen, he looked like the smartest one in the room, but off screen, his life would take a path no one expected. Matthew Stymie Beard was born in 1925 near Los Angeles, and by the age of 5, he had already become one of the standout stars of the Little Rascals. His smooth delivery, clever timing, and natural composure made him unforgettable. But behind that success was a heavy responsibility most children could never imagine. His income didn't just support him, it helped support a massive family of 13 siblings. Fame for Stymie wasn't just about attention, it was pressure, constant and unrelenting. As he grew older, the spotlight began to fade. Roles became smaller, opportunities fewer. He appeared in films like Captain Blood and Jezebel, but Hollywood was already moving on. Around this time, he married, hoping to build stability outside the industry, but the transition was far from easy. The expectations, the financial strain, and the slow disappearance of fame began to weigh on him. And like so many before him, he started looking for an escape. That escape turned into something far more dangerous. As a teenager, Stymie drifted into street life, and what began as small trouble quickly escalated. Arrests followed, then came addiction, first marijuana, and eventually heroin. His life spiraled into a cycle of crime, prison, and dependency. The same boy who once stood confidently in front of cameras was now fighting battles no one could see. Years passed like this, his life unraveling while the world still remembered the smiling child in the derby hat. But then something unexpected happened. Stymie entered Synanon, a controversial rehabilitation program in Los Angeles, and against the odds, he changed. Slowly, he broke free from heroin. He rebuilt his life piece by piece, returning to acting in television shows like Sanford and Son and Good Times, and even appearing in the Buddy Holly story. It wasn't a full return to fame, but it was something more powerful. It was redemption. On January 3rd, 1981, just 2 days after his 56th birthday, Stymie suffered a stroke. He fell down a staircase, sustaining severe head injuries. Days later, on January 8th, he died from complications of pneumonia. He was 56 years old. He was buried in Los Angeles, his legendary derby hat placed beside him, an enduring symbol of the boy the world never forgot. Despite years of struggle, he left behind an estimated net worth of around $300,000. But more than that, he left behind a story few could match, a life that fell apart, hit the bottom, and somehow found its way back before the final chapter closed. Darla Hood. Darla wasn't just part of the Little Rascals, she was its heart. But behind that charm and innocence was a life shaped by pressure, expectations, and a quiet struggle that few ever truly saw. Darla Hood was born in 1931 in Oklahoma, and by the age of 4, she had already stepped into the spotlight. As Darla, she became the center of affection, especially through her unforgettable connection with Alfalfa. Her singing, her confidence, and her natural presence made her one of the most beloved faces in the series. To audiences, she represented something pure and perfect. But growing up with that image would come at a cost. As she entered adulthood, Darla tried to build a life beyond the screen. She married Robert Decker in 1949, but the marriage ended in divorce by 1957. That same year, she remarried and went on to have 3 children. On the surface, it looked like she had found stability, but behind the scenes, life was more complicated. Her husband later suffered a stroke and required a wheelchair, placing even more responsibility on her shoulders. At the same time, she continued performing, singing in nightclubs and appearing on television while trying to hold everything together. But the deeper struggle was internal. People close to Darla described a constant anxiety about her appearance. The image she built as a child, the perfect girl, never left her. Rumors circulated that she had been pushed from a young age to maintain a certain look, and over time that pressure may have turned into something more serious. Stories later suggested she struggled with eating issues and became dependent on diet pills, trying to hold on to an image the world refused to let her outgrow. Then came an ending no one expected. In 1979, while preparing for a Little Rascals reunion, Darla underwent what should have been a routine appendectomy. But during the procedure, she received a contaminated blood transfusion that led to hepatitis. Complications quickly followed, and on June 13, 1979, Darla Hood died from heart failure. She was just 47 years old. Her death shocked those who knew her, not because her life looked tragic from the outside, but because it ended so suddenly, so quietly. At the time of her death, her net worth was estimated at around $500,000, but what she left behind was something far more lasting: the image of a girl who seemed to have everything yet carried a pressure that never truly faded. Darla gave the world beauty, warmth, and unforgettable moments, but in the end, it may have been that very image that slowly wore her down. Norman Chaney. He didn't need lines to be funny. Sometimes all it took was a look, a slow, frustrated expression that made audiences burst into laughter. Chubby was different. He wasn't loud, he wasn't flashy, but his presence was unforgettable. And yet the very thing that made him famous would quietly destroy his life. Norman Chubby Chaney was born in 1914 in Cambridge, Maryland. By the time he joined the Little Rascals as a teenager, his appearance had already become his identity. His size, his timing, and his natural comedic reactions gave the series a unique kind of humor. Audiences loved him. But behind the laughter was a boy being defined by something he couldn't control: his body. Unlike many others, Chubby never experienced the illusion of a glamorous adult life. He left the series early, never married, never built a family, and never truly escaped the image that had made him famous. People didn't see an actor, they saw a body. And over time, that identity became a burden he couldn't shake. What made it worse was that his body itself began to turn against him. Despite maintaining a normal diet and even trying to stay active, Chubby's weight continued to increase uncontrollably. Eventually, he reached over 300 pounds while his height remained just 4 feet 7 inches. Doctors later discovered a glandular illness, but by then the damage had already been done. Rumors later suggested that even during his time on set, his image may have been encouraged or exaggerated for laughs, even as his health quietly declined. In 1935, he was admitted to Johns Hopkins Hospital for treatment. What followed was just as dangerous as the condition itself. His weight dropped dramatically from over 300 pounds to under 140 in a short period of time. The sudden change placed enormous stress on his body, pushing him into a fragile state. And then, not long after everything collapsed, on May 29, 1936, Norman Chubby Chaney died from myocarditis at just 21 years old. He was buried in Baltimore, but in a heartbreaking twist, his grave remained unmarked for 76 years because his family could not afford a headstone. It wasn't until 2012 that a proper marker was finally placed. At the time of his death, his net worth was estimated to be under $5,000. The boy who once made millions laugh was nearly forgotten, left behind with nothing but a memory shaped by an image he never chose. Jackie Cooper. Hollywood has always known how to create tears, but sometimes those tears aren't acting. Sometimes they're real, and once they're captured on camera, they never truly go away. Jackie Cooper was born in 1922 in Los Angeles, and from an incredibly young age, he was already stepping into a world that demanded more than any child should ever have to give. At just 7 years old, he became one of the standout faces in The Little Rascals. His emotional range, his natural expressions, and his ability to connect with audiences made him unforgettable. He wasn't just performing, he was feeling everything. But behind that talent was a childhood shaped by instability. His father abandoned the family early, leaving Jackie to grow up in an environment where success wasn't optional, it was expected. As he grew older, Jackie tried to build a life beyond the roles that defined him. He married 3 times, first to June Horn, then briefly to Hildy Parks, and finally to Barbara Krause, with whom he had 3 children. Compared to many of his fellow child stars, his life seemed more stable, even successful. He continued acting, transitioned into directing, and built a career that extended far beyond his childhood fame. On the surface, it looked like he had escaped the fate that followed so many others. But the past never truly left him. One moment from his childhood would follow him for the rest of his life. During the filming of Skippy, a director wanted a more emotional scene, real tears, not acting. To force that reaction, they staged a cruel lie, telling Jackie that his dog had been shot. The shock and pain were immediate and real. The camera captured exactly what they wanted, but that moment left a scar that never fully healed. Years later, Jackie would quietly reveal how deeply that experience affected him, hinting at a darker side of Hollywood that few dared to speak about openly. Unlike many of his peers, Jackie didn't fall into complete collapse. He rebuilt, adapted, and succeeded in ways others couldn't. But success doesn't erase damage, it just hides it better. Throughout his life, he remained careful with his words, rarely speaking in detail about the industry that shaped him. Yet between the lines, there was always a sense that something had been taken from him too early, something he could never fully get back. On May 3, 2011, Jackie Cooper died in Santa Monica, California at the age of 88. By the time of his death, his net worth was estimated at around $18 million, far greater than most of his former castmates. But his story isn't just about success, it's about survival. Because behind the awards, the career, and the longevity was a little boy who once cried for real in a world that didn't care whether those tears would last forever. Billy Loughlin. Some voices are impossible to forget, not because they're perfect, but because they're different. Strange. Unexpected. Froggy didn't sound like anyone else, and that was exactly why people remembered him. But sometimes the thing that makes you stand out is also the thing that follows you long after the laughter fades. Billy Froggy. Laughlin was born in 1932 in San Gabriel, California, and by the age of 8, he had already carved out a place in The Little Rascals. His raspy, croaking voice made him one of the most unusual and memorable characters in the series. Every line he delivered felt unpredictable, almost surreal, and audiences loved it. In the final years of the show, Froggy brought a fresh energy that helped keep the magic alive. But unlike many child stars, Billy didn't chase fame. When the series ended, he didn't fight to stay in Hollywood. He tried a few small roles, including a brief appearance in Johnny Doesn't Live Here Anymore, but something inside him had already changed. He told his mother he didn't want to force a career that didn't feel right. Instead of clinging to the spotlight, he quietly stepped away, choosing a simpler, more normal life. Still, one detail continued to follow him: his voice. Officially, it was just a performance, something he created for fun. But over time, darker rumors began to circulate. Some claimed the studio had pushed him to exaggerate it to strain his voice further for the sake of comedy. Nothing was ever proven, but the idea lingered, another reminder of how far the industry could go to create something entertaining no matter the cost. Then came a moment that ended everything far too soon. On August 31st, 1948, Billy was riding as a passenger on a motor scooter during a newspaper delivery route. In an instant, the scooter turned into the path of a speeding truck. The impact was devastating. He was rushed to the hospital, but about 6 hours later, Billy Froggy Laughlin was gone. He was only 16 years old. He was buried alongside his parents in California, leaving behind no fortune, no long career, no second chapter, just a memory. A voice that once made people laugh, now frozen in time. And maybe that's what makes his story hit differently. Not a slow fall, not a long struggle, just a life that ended before it ever had the chance to become anything more. Bobby Hutchins. Some childhoods don't end, they're taken. Not all at once, not loudly, but piece by piece until what's left barely feels like a childhood at all. And for one little boy in The Little Rascals, the damage didn't just stay in the past, it followed him all the way to the end. Bobby Weezer Hutchins was born in 1925 in Tacoma, Washington, and entered the series at just 2 years old. On screen, he was the eager little tag-along, the kid always trying to keep up, always chasing the others with wide-eyed excitement. Audiences saw innocence, energy, and charm. But behind the camera, his reality was far more complicated. According to those who knew him, his father was strict, controlling, and deeply focused on turning Bobby into something bigger than just a child. That pressure came with consequences. Fellow actor Jackie Cooper later recalled how Bobby was often pulled away from the other children, isolated instead of allowed to play or connect. Even more disturbing were the rumors that followed claims that he was deliberately underfed to keep his small childlike appearance for the screen. Whether fully true or not, those stories painted a picture of a boy growing up without the freedom most children take for granted. The emotional scars didn't fade with time. As Bobby grew older, he reportedly developed severe claustrophobia, possibly linked to harsh punishments from his childhood stories suggested he had been locked in dark spaces if he failed to memorize lines. Acting eventually became part of his past, and like many former child stars, he tried to find a new identity. He joined the United States Army Air Force's training as a pilot, perhaps searching for distance from Hollywood, from memories, from everything that once defined him. But that new beginning never had the chance to fully unfold. On May 17, 1945, during a training exercise in California, Bobby's aircraft collided with another plane while landing. The crash was instant and fatal. He was only 20 years old, just days away from graduating flight school. There was no long career, no second act, no time to rebuild what had been lost. He left behind no fortune, no legacy measured in wealth. Only the memory of a small boy named Weezer forever running after something just out of reach. And maybe that's what makes his story so haunting. Not how it ended, but how little of it was ever truly his to begin with. If you're still here, comment 1, because this story is one people shouldn't forget. Alan Hoskins. Not every struggle is visible. Some happen behind the scenes, hidden behind smiles, laughter, and performances meant to entertain. For Farina, the challenge wasn't just growing up in Hollywood, it was growing up in a world that didn't treat him equally. Alan Farina Hoskins was born in 1920 in Boston, and by the age of 2, he had already become one of the earliest stars of the Little Rascals. With his expressive face and natural charm, he quickly became a favorite. At one point, he was earning $350 a week, an incredible amount for a child actor. On screen, he brought joy and laughter. Off-screen, his reality was far more complicated. As a young black child in 1930s, America Farina faced challenges most audiences never saw. Stories later revealed that he sometimes needed protection from racist threats near the set. Fame gave him recognition, but not safety. While millions watched and admired him, the world outside the camera often treated him very differently. As he grew older, opportunities began to fade. After serving in the U.S. Army Air Corps during World War II, he returned to an industry that no longer had space for him. His career quietly ended, and blacklisting pressures made things even harder. Instead of chasing a closed door, he chose a different path. Farina stepped away from Hollywood and dedicated his life to helping others working in rehabilitation programs for people struggling with addiction and mental health. On July 26, 1980, he passed away at the age of 59 after battling cancer. He didn't leave behind great wealth, but he left something deeper, a story of resilience, quiet strength, and a man who chose purpose over fame. Dorothy DeBorba. Some stars don't fade all at once. They slowly dim, quietly slipping away from the spotlight until only a memory remains. Dorothy was one of those stars, a bright spark in childhood whose light softened over time, leaving behind something more subtle and more bittersweet. Dorothy DeBorba was born in 1925 in California, and by the age of 5, she had already become one of the standout girls in the Little Rascals. With her curly hair, sharp timing, and playful attitude, she brought a different kind of energy to the screen. She wasn't just sweet, she was witty, expressive, and full of personality. Audiences loved her for it. In those early years, she helped shape the spirit of the series, becoming one of the most memorable faces of the gang. But like many child stars, her path didn't continue in front of the camera. As she grew older, the roles disappeared and the world that once celebrated her quietly moved on. Dorothy stepped away from acting and built a different life. She married twice, became a mother of 2, and eventually worked as a secretary far from the lights and attention she once knew. On the surface, it looked like a normal life. But underneath, there was a lingering sense that something had ended too early. The transition wasn't just emotional, it was physical. Over time, Dorothy developed serious health problems, including emphysema, a slow and unforgiving disease that made breathing increasingly difficult. Rumors followed her for years, suggesting that the loud, primitive sound equipment used during early film productions may have contributed to long-term health issues, including chronic headaches. Whether true or not, her later years were marked by a gradual decline far removed from the lively girl audiences once remembered. On June 2, 2010, Dorothy DeBorba passed away in California at the age of 85. Unlike many of her fellow cast members, she lived a long life, but not one filled with fame or fortune in the end. What remained wasn't wealth or headlines, but something quieter. A memory, a feeling. The image of a curly-haired girl with a mischievous smile who once brought life to the screen. And maybe that's what makes her story different. Not a sudden tragedy, not a dramatic fall, but a slow fading of something that once felt so bright. A reminder that not all endings are loud, some simply drift away, leaving behind only echoes of who they used to be. Those 303. What really happened after the laughter faded? When the cameras stopped and the audience moved on, where did the cast go next? The Big Bang Theory didn't truly end, it pushed its stars into very different paths, filled with risks, reinvention, and hard choices. Now let's find out where the cast is today and how their lives changed after the show ended. Laura Spencer. Laura Spencer's path to success was never loud, flashy, or built on overnight fame. It was quiet, disciplined, and steady, and that is exactly why it has lasted. Born on May 8, 1986 in Oklahoma City, Laura Spencer developed a passion for acting early and pursued it seriously. She studied theater at the University of Oklahoma, graduating in 2008 with a Bachelor of Fine Arts. There were no shortcuts. She worked, trained, auditioned, and waited for the right opportunity. That opportunity arrived in 2013 when she joined The Big Bang Theory as Emily Sweeney, a dermatologist drawn into Raj Kuthrapalli's complicated love life. The role was originally written for just one episode, but audiences responded to Emily's unexpected mix of warmth and darkness, sweet on the surface yet fascinated by horror films and emotional intensity. What was meant to be brief turned into a multi-season run with Spencer remaining on the show through season 10. At the same time, she accomplished something few actors manage without burning out. While appearing regularly on The Big Bang Theory, Spencer was also recurring on Bones as Jessica Warren from seasons 9 to 12. Balancing two hit network series with very different tones required precision and stamina, and she handled both without controversy or complaint. Her rise, however, began even earlier in the digital space. Before primetime television, Spencer gained recognition through The Lizzie Bennet Diaries, a modern social media-driven adaptation of Pride and Prejudice. The project won an Emmy Award for Outstanding Creative Achievement in Interactive Media, and Spencer later credited the experience with teaching her how storytelling was evolving and how audiences wanted more intimacy and authenticity. After her time on mainstream television, Spencer resisted the temptation to chase fame. Instead, she chose range. In 2021, she appeared in 13 Minutes, a tense drama centered on a deadly tornado and the human stories caught inside it. Her role as Vicky allowed her to explore heavier themes including immigration and reproductive rights, signaling a clear shift toward socially conscious material. By 2024, Spencer continued that trajectory with guest appearances on Grey's Anatomy in the episode If Walls Could Talk and on Reservation Dogs, a critically acclaimed series known for its cultural depth and emotional honesty. The pattern was unmistakable. She gravitated toward projects with meaning, not just visibility. By 2025, Laura Spencer had fully settled into her professional identity. She was no longer chasing breakthroughs or long-running contracts. Instead, she became highly selective, favoring limited appearances and character-driven stories over constant exposure. Casting directors now saw her as a reliable, thoughtful performer, someone who brought credibility the moment she appeared on screen. Off-camera, her life remained just as controlled. She married Michael Jack Greenwald in 2019 and chose to live largely outside the Hollywood spotlight. Friends describe her as grounded and deliberate, more interested in the work itself than the noise surrounding it. In 2025, she also became increasingly involved in arts education and community-based initiatives supporting young performers without publicizing her efforts. Laura Spencer's story doesn't explode, it accumulates. A role meant for one episode becomes years. A supporting character becomes memorable. And while others chase headlines, she builds something quieter: longevity. Kevin Sussman. Kevin Sussman never looked like someone destined for sitcom immortality, and that ironically is exactly why his story works. Long before audiences knew him as Stuart Bloom, Sussman was just another struggling actor in Los Angeles, auditioning by day, working at a real comic book store by night. It wasn't a metaphor, it was survival. Hollywood didn't hand him shortcuts, and fame wasn't part of the plan. Acting was. When The Big Bang Theory premiered, fate played a quiet trick. Sussman was originally cast as Howard Wolowitz, but a prior commitment to Ugly Betty forced him to walk away. The role went to Simon Helberg, and history changed. Years later, Sussman returned in a smaller part, Stuart, the awkward, perpetually unlucky comic book store owner. What began as a background character slowly turned into one of the show's most oddly beloved figures. Stuart wasn't heroic, he wasn't successful, he was anxious, broke, and painfully human, and audiences recognized themselves in him. After The Big Bang Theory ended in 2019, many expected Sussman to struggle under the weight of such a recognizable role. Instead, he did the opposite. He disappeared into serious television. He took on dramatic parts in Better Call Saul, playing Mr. Kubi's associate in a tightly wound legal world, and later appeared in the Dropout Hulu's dramatization of the Theranos scandal where he portrayed Mark Rosler. These weren't flashy roles, but they were precise, and they proved something important: Sussman wasn't a sitcom leftover. He was an actor. Comedy never left him, though. He reunited with former castmates on Call Me Kat and landed a recurring role in Lessons in Chemistry on Apple TV+, effortlessly shifting between humor and restraint. The ease of that transition became his calling card. Behind the scenes, Sussman's ambitions ran deeper. In 2013, he co-created Dark Minions, a stop-motion animated comedy with John Ross Bowie. Amazon Studios bought the project, though it never reached full production. Still, the message was clear. Sussman wasn't content just performing lines. He wanted to build worlds. By 2025, Kevin Sussman's career had settled into something practical and honest. He wasn't chasing leading roles or nostalgic revivals. He was working consistently across drama, comedy, and television, choosing projects that fit the reality of the modern industry. After the SAG-AFTRA strike, Sussman spoke openly about how the shift to streaming changed everything. When The Big Bang Theory aired on CBS syndication, provided long-term financial security. Once the show moved to streaming platforms, that stability largely disappeared. His experience highlighted a broader issue affecting thousands of working actors, not the famous few, but the ones who actually keep television running. That perspective defines where Sussman stands now. He is no longer the struggling actor behind a comic book counter, and he never tried to reinvent himself as something he isn't. Instead, he became what Hollywood quietly relies on: a dependable character actor with range, experience, and longevity. Do you remember Sheldon Cooper? Comment 1 if you want the next part to reveal where he is now and what his life looks like today. Jim Parsons. Jim Parsons' career is often described as fearless, but the truth is more precise. It's intentional. Every major move he made after The Big Bang Theory was less about ambition and more about timing boundaries and knowing when to walk away. Parsons spent years grinding through auditions, commercials, and theater work before landing the role that would define a generation. In 2007, he was cast as Sheldon Cooper on The Big Bang Theory, a socially awkward, hyper-intelligent physicist who could have easily become a caricature. Instead, Parsons gave Sheldon precision, vulnerability, and rhythm. Over 12 seasons, he won 4 Primetime Emmy Awards and a Golden Globe, becoming one of the most recognizable characters in television history. At his peak, Parsons earned $1 million per episode, with total series earnings estimated at $177.7 million. By any industry standard, he had won. Then came the moment that shocked everyone. In 2018, CBS offered Parsons a reported $50 million deal to continue the series. He said no. His decision directly led to the show ending in 2019. Later, Parsons explained it simply: the timing felt right. He didn't want to stay out of fear. He wanted to leave with clarity. Walking away from Sheldon didn't mean cutting ties. Parsons remained deeply involved as narrator and executive producer of Young Sheldon, which ran until 2024, allowing him to stay connected without repeating himself. Post-Big Bang, Parsons leaned sharply into drama and theater. In 2020, he starred in Hollywood, earning an Emmy nomination for his portrayal of a ruthless talent agent. In 2022, he delivered one of his most emotionally restrained performances in, spoiler alert, based on journalist Michael Ausiello's memoir. By 2024, Parsons returned to his roots: Broadway. He took on the role of the stage manager in Our Town at the Ethel Barrymore Theater, a part built on restraint, control, and authority. That same year, he appeared alongside Jessica Lange in Paula Vogel's Mother play, reinforcing his commitment to theater as a long-term artistic home. Behind the scenes, Parsons found equal purpose. In 2015, he and his husband Todd Spiewak founded That's Wonderful Productions, focusing on stories centered on underrepresented voices. Their projects include special and Emmy-nominated show about a gay man with cerebral palsy, proof that Parsons' influence extended far beyond acting. In his personal life, Parsons remains deliberately private. Married since 2017, he and Spiewak have chosen not to have children, prioritizing creative partnership and balance over public expectation. As for returning to Sheldon, Parsons has been clear: a full revival is unlikely. He's joked it would require a resurrection. Still, he hasn't completely ruled out a brief guest appearance on his terms. By 2025, Jim Parsons isn't chasing relevance. He doesn't need to. He exited television's biggest stage at its peak and rebuilt his career around theater storytelling and control. He didn't leave The Big Bang Theory because he had nowhere to go. He left because he knew exactly where he was headed. And that clarity, more than awards or money, may be his greatest role yet. Kaley Cuoco. For more than a decade, Kaley Cuoco lived inside a role that millions felt they knew personally. When it ended, she didn't look back, she recalibrated. Cuoco entered Hollywood early, but real recognition arrived in 2007 with The Big Bang Theory. As Penny, she wasn't written to be the smartest person in the room, but she became its emotional center. Cuoco's instincts, natural timing, grounded reactions, and an ability to soften the show's sharp edges turned Penny into a cultural constant. When the series wrapped in 2019, the safety net disappeared. Cuoco has since admitted she feared being frozen in place by Penny's success. Rather than waiting for offers that felt familiar, she chose autonomy. She launched Norman Productions and went searching for discomfort. That discomfort arrived quickly with The Flight Attendant. Playing Cassie Bowden meant chaos, addiction, paranoia, physical exhaustion, and emotional collapse. It was aggressive, messy work, and it demanded something Cuoco had rarely been asked to show on screen. The gamble paid off. The series became a breakout hit and earned her major award nominations, signaling that she could carry a project on her own terms. Around the same time, she stepped into animation, voicing Harley Quinn beginning in 2019. The performance was sharp, unhinged, and unapologetic, stripping away any lingering expectation that Cuoco would remain safely likable. The show's success only reinforced her shift toward bolder material. Her post-Big Bang choices didn't follow a neat pattern. A high-concept romantic comedy, Meet Cute 2022. A dark, true crime-inspired comedy in 2023. Some critics saw overlap in tone, but Cuoco seemed unconcerned. The goal wasn't reinvention for optics, it was momentum through risk. Privately, the final years of The Big Bang Theory were complicated. In 2017, salary negotiations created tension when core cast members took pay cuts to elevate others. Then, without warning, Jim Parsons announced his exit in 2018, effectively ending the show. Cuoco later said the decision blindsided her. She also spoke openly about disagreeing with Penny's final arc, particularly the surprise pregnancy, which she felt conflicted with the character's growth. By 2025, Cuoco finds herself facing a different kind of test. She is preparing to portray Doris Day in an upcoming biographical series, a role tied to Hollywood legacy, restraint, and emotional precision. Success would mark a clear shift away from contemporary comedy and into classic dramatic territory. Sarah Gilbert. Born on January 29, 1975 in Santa Monica, California. Gilbert became famous at a young age as Darlene Connor on Roseanne. Darlene wasn't the typical TV teen, she was sharp, sarcastic, intellectually intimidating. Audiences connected instantly. Critics did too. Gilbert earned 2 Emmy nominations, and by the time the original series ended in 1997, she was already seen as one of the most distinctive young actors on television. But fame never fully defined her. In a move few child stars make, Gilbert stepped back and enrolled at Yale University, graduating magna cum laude in 1997 with a degree in art. That decision set the tone for everything that followed. She would not be owned by Hollywood. Years later, she joined The Big Bang Theory as Leslie Winkle, a brilliant physicist and Leonard Hofstadter's early love interest. Leslie's blunt intelligence and biting comebacks made her instantly memorable. She was briefly promoted to the main cast, but the writers struggled to integrate her into the long-term ensemble, and the character was eventually reduced to guest appearances. Even so, Leslie remained a fan favorite, proof that Gilbert could leave a mark without dominating screen time. Her influence extended far beyond acting. In 2010, Gilbert co-created The Talk, a daytime panel show centered on women discussing culture, politics, and family. The show became a major success, winning multiple daytime Emmy Awards. Gilbert served as both co-host and executive producer for nearly a decade, quietly shaping one of CBS's most durable daytime franchises before stepping away in 2019. That same year marked one of the most explosive chapters of her career. When Roseanne Barr posted a racist tweet, ABC canceled the revived Roseanne despite massive ratings. Gilbert publicly condemned the remarks, stating they did not reflect the values of the cast or crew. Barr responded by blaming Gilbert for the cancellation, igniting a very public feud. The fallout was brutal, but Gilbert moved forward, helping launch The Connors, a spin-off that continued the story without Barr. The show survived, and that alone spoke volumes. Beyond television, Gilbert explored film Poison Ivy, writing in Cars with Boys, guest starred on series like ER Grey's Anatomy and Atypical, and co-founded the production company Sarah Plus Tom with Tom Werner. She also became an executive producer on upcoming projects, shifting more of her energy behind the camera. Outside Hollywood, Gilbert's life is just as intentional. A Yale-trained photographer, she has exhibited her work internationally and remains a vocal advocate for sustainability and environmental responsibility. She rarely courts attention, preferring control over visibility. By 2025, Sarah Gilbert is no longer defined by any single role, not Darlene, not Leslie, not even The Talk. She is a creator, a producer, and a survivor of one of the most public implosions in modern television history. Her career isn't loud, it's resilient. And in an industry that often punishes women for speaking up, Sarah Gilbert's longevity sends a very clear message. You don't have to win every battle to outlast the war. It seems like the entire cast of The Big Bang Theory went on to have successful careers after the show. But do you know who didn't? Comment the name of the cast member you think struggled after the series ended and let us know. Simon Helberg. Born on December 9, 1980 in Los Angeles. Helberg grew up around comedy and performance, but his path into the industry was anything but guaranteed. Before The Big Bang Theory, he was just another working actor moving between small film roles, television guest spots, and improv stages trying to gain traction. That traction arrived in 2007 with Howard Wolowitz, an overconfident aerospace engineer with questionable fashion choices and a voice just loud enough to be unforgettable. For 12 seasons, Helberg leaned fully into the character's excess, transforming Howard from a punchline into someone oddly vulnerable. By the time the series ended in 2019, Howard wasn't just comic relief, he was part of the show's emotional core. When the cameras stopped, Helberg made a sharp turn away from sitcom comfort. Instead of staying on television, he chose unpredictability. In 2021, he starred in Annette, directed by Leos Carax, alongside Adam Driver and Marion Cotillard. Helberg played the accompanist, a quiet, unsettling pianist who hovered at the edges of the story. The role was restrained, strange, and intentionally uncomfortable, nothing like Howard. His commitment went so far that he obtained French citizenship to help secure funding for the film, a move that spoke volumes about how seriously he took the project. Critics noticed the performance reframed him overnight. Helberg didn't abandon television completely. He later appeared on Poker Face in a guest role that blended offbeat humor with subtle menace, proof that his comic instincts were still razor-sharp, just better controlled. Long before The Big Bang Theory, Helberg had already shown dramatic range. His performance as Cosme McMoon in Florence Foster Jenkins earned him a Golden Globe nomination, a reminder that Howard Wolowitz was never the limit of his ability, only the most visible chapter. Off-screen, Helberg's life has remained unusually stable by Hollywood standards. He married actress Jocelyn Town in 2007, the same year The Big Bang Theory premiered. Together they have 2 children. In 2023, the couple quietly listed their Los Angeles home, a move that sparked speculation but no public explanation, consistent with Helberg's preference for privacy. Behind the laughter, his time on The Big Bang Theory was not without struggle. During the show's early years, Helberg battled obsessive-compulsive disorder and severe anxiety challenges he later discussed openly to highlight how mental health struggles can coexist with professional success. One of the strangest revelations of his career came long after the show ended. In 2022, Helberg learned that he had not been the first choice for Howard Wolowitz. The role was initially offered to Kevin Sussman, who had to drop out due to scheduling conflicts. The knowledge was shocking, but also clarifying. A reminder of how close success can come to never happening at all. Simon Helberg didn't reinvent himself after The Big Bang Theory. He redirected himself. He traded comfort for credibility, noise for precision, and certainty for risk. And in doing so, he proved that sometimes the quietest turns lead to the most lasting work. Johnny Galecki. Galecki was a working actor long before The Big Bang Theory ever existed. By the time he became Leonard Hofstadter in 2007, he already understood the cost of longevity in Hollywood. Leonard, the anxious physicist forever caught between intellect and insecurity, became one of television's most recognizable characters, and Galecki carried the role for 12 seasons until the show ended in 2019. When it was over, Galecki didn't rush to replace it. His first move was familiar, but brief. He returned as David Healy on The Conners, revisiting a character he first played decades earlier on Roseanne. The appearance gave audiences closure, but it wasn't a long-term commitment. Acting was no longer the only focus. Instead, Galecki shifted behind the camera. One of his most personal projects was A-OK, a sitcom set in 1991 about a struggling early internet startup. He co-created the series with John Enbom and served as an executive producer. The move signaled a change. Galecki was more interested in shaping stories than starring in them. He didn't disappear entirely. Galecki continued taking roles in independent films, choosing smaller character-driven projects rather than studio productions. The pattern was intentional. He wanted challenge without exposure, craft without noise. Off-screen, his life changed even more dramatically. In 2019, he welcomed a son, Avery, with Elena Meyer. The relationship ended in 2020, but fatherhood reshaped his priorities. A few years later, he married Morgan Galecki, and in 2023, the couple welcomed a daughter, Una. Around the same time, Galecki left Los Angeles and moved to Nashville, trading industry proximity for privacy. Behind the scenes of The Big Bang Theory, Galecki had quietly dealt with serious challenges. In 2011, he was diagnosed with Bell's palsy, a condition causing temporary facial paralysis. He continued working through numbness and drooping without public acknowledgement, determined not to disrupt production. He was also unafraid to speak out. After the 2018 Florida school shooting, Galecki publicly supported gun control legislation. The response was swift and hostile. He lost thousands of followers, but he never retracted his stance. And then there were the oddities. Over 12 years on set, Galecki secretly stuck used chewing gum on a hidden wall, an unglamorous ritual later revealed by co-star Kunal Nayyar. He also admitted to being the only cast member who had sex in his dressing room during the show's entire run, a confession that stunned fans and colleagues alike. By 2025, Johnny Galecki isn't measuring success by visibility. He has restructured his career around family privacy and selective creativity. He still works, but only when the project fits the life he chose. He didn't fade away after The Big Bang Theory. He stepped back. And in an industry that rarely allows that choice, Johnny Galecki took it anyway. Kunal Nayyar. Kunal Nayyar spent 12 years playing the quietest man in the room. When the laughter stopped, he chose to do the opposite, take risks. Born on April 30th, 1981 in London and raised in New Delhi, Nayyar came to the US as an immigrant actor with an accent Hollywood didn't always know what to do with. That changed in 2007 when he was cast as Raj Koothrappali on The Big Bang Theory. Raj's social anxiety and emotional vulnerability made him instantly recognizable, and Nayyar carried the role through all 12 seasons until the show ended in 2019. Afterward, he avoided the easy path. No new sitcom, no familiar rhythm. Instead, Nayyar stunned audiences in Criminal UK, playing Sandeep Singh, a convicted serial killer. The performance was cold-controlled and unsettling, everything Raj wasn't. Critics took notice, and in 2021, Nayyar earned a BAFTA TV nomination, marking one of the most dramatic pivots of any Big Bang alum. He followed that with Suspicion, acting opposite Uma Thurman in a tense, grounded thriller that reinforced his move toward darker, more serious material. Comedy didn't disappear, but it became selective. In 2024, he reunited with Melissa Rauch on Night Court, and appeared in the romantic comedy How to Date Billy Walsh, lighter roles chosen by design, not habit. One of his most ambitious projects is still ahead, Christmas Karma, a Bollywood-style musical adaptation of A Christmas Carol where Nayyar will play Scrooge. The role blends music, cultural identity, and reinvention, an echo of his own career. Beyond acting, Nayyar has explored writing and theater. His memoir, Yes, My Accent Is Real, chronicled his immigrant experience in Hollywood, while stage work on Broadway and the West End proved his range beyond television. His career has also seen controversy, including backlash over a Big Bang Theory line that resurfaced years later, but Nayyar chose not to amplify the noise. By 2025, Kunal Nayyar is no longer defined by Raj's silence. He reshaped his career by stepping into discomfort and letting the work speak. Melissa Rauch. Melissa Rauch never planned on becoming a sitcom star. When fame arrived, she made sure it wouldn't be the finish line. Born on June 23, 1980 in New Jersey, Rauch was a struggling comedian and actress when she joined The Big Bang Theory in 2009 as Bernadette Rostenkowski-Wolowitz. Her high-pitched voice and sharp delivery quickly set her apart, turning Bernadette into a fan favorite. What began as a recurring role grew into a decade-long run, carrying her through the show's final season in 2019. But Rauch never wanted to be boxed in by sitcom comfort. While still on The Big Bang Theory, she took a major risk with The Bronze, a dark, abrasive film she co-wrote, co-produced, and starred in. She played a bitter former Olympic gymnast clinging to past glory, a role completely opposite Bernadette. Studio executives initially wanted a more recognizable film star, but Rauch fought for the lead and won. Reviews were mixed, but her performance stood out as fearless and raw. Voice acting became another outlet. In 2017, she voiced Harley Quinn in Batman, and Harley Quinn fulfilling a longtime dream and bringing her own chaotic energy to the iconic character. After The Big Bang Theory ended, Rauch slowed down, not out of uncertainty but choice. She focused on family with her husband, writer-producer Winston Rauch, welcoming children in 2017 and 2020. When she returned to television, it was on her terms. In 2023, Rauch re-emerged as the lead of Night Court on NBC, playing Judge Abby Stone, daughter of the original series Judge. She also served as an executive producer. The revival was a success, praised for balancing nostalgia with emotional depth, particularly Abby's struggle with alcoholism, which added weight beneath the comedy. Beyond acting, Rauch co-runs January Productions with her husband and co-founded Oscar's Kids, a non-profit supporting children with cancer. By 2025, Melissa Rauch is no longer defined by Bernadette. She's a creator, producer, and performer who proved she could carry comedy, drama, and leadership at once. She didn't wait for permission to grow. She built the space herself and stepped into it.